Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's members meeting at Festa, hosted by KPMG, which is a member of Festa. Our members meetings are usually closed to members only, but this time we decided to keep it open for all because this is a very relevant topic for today's society and the world we live in. And we'd like to thank KPMG for that initiative and the amazing agenda that they've put together. The topic helps us think forward and explore global trends that will shape the lives we live. And it is important to do so in a diverse group and conversation. The meeting will be in English, and thank you very much and welcome, and I'll give the word over to Benoit.
Yeah, thank you, Ron, for this introduction. So my name is Benoit Cheron, and I am in charge of the sustainability services at KPMG Iceland. I want first to thank our group of speakers today. It's a great illustration of this new reality with speakers talking from home, office, in different countries, and broadcast on YouTube. This period is pushing us with more creativity, more innovation, and increased collaboration. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from them today. A small word on logistics. The meeting is recorded and will be available on YouTube. Don't hesitate to share the link with your network. Also, the questions can be sent through Slido using the access code provided in the email. We'll collect the question and it will feed the Q&A and panel session. Now, I let the floor to Stein Paulsen, who is partner at KPMG Iceland in the advisory practice, and he has extensive experience as a business leader and chief executive officer. So please, Stein. Stein, I think we cannot hear you.
So
Steinþór, you're still muted. Please start again.
So some technical problems. Sorry about this. So hi everyone. We are going through strange and challenging times. COVID is having a big impact on our lives, and we are faced with accelerated pace of change. The journey we are on can be described with 4 phases: reaction, resilience, recovery, and a new reality. It can vary where businesses, industries, and nations are on this journey, but it's probably fair to say that we are mainly in the resilience phase now, going through uncertainty. However, we need to use the time now and in the very near future to chart a course, take actions, identify the opportunities, go through recovery, and adapt to a new world, new reality. To bring some clarity to this uncertainty, KPMG has this year interviewed hundreds of CEOs from large companies worldwide to have their view on the complex situation and their confidence in the future. Interviews were done at the beginning of the year, before many markets were beginning to feel the full impact of COVID. And then in July, August, a follow-up survey to understand how thinking has evolved. So a few words about key developments. Businesses are looking to change the recruitment strategies. As remote working has widened their potential talent pool, and companies may be rethinking their office space in short term, while also considering the future of work. Since the start of the pandemic, talent risk has risen considerably, and then we have the supply chain risk, we have geopolitics, climate change risk, cybersecurity, and emerging disruptive technology. So this is the top of the risk agenda. Business leaders are betting on major dimensions of digital transformation, and the majority have seen this accelerate during the lockdown. Overall, 3 key themes emerged from this year's survey, which we at KPMG characterize as purpose, prosperity, and priorities. CEOs are rewriting the leadership playbook to create more trusted and purposeful organizations that play a critical role in addressing societal challenges. Scrutiny of corporate actions has never been stronger. To maintain and build on the trust of employees, customers, communities, stakeholders, CEOs must demonstrate that their organization's purpose is meaningful, relevant, and makes a difference. The pandemic has shown the power of purpose. However, it must be integrated into the fabric of the organization in order to succeed, and the CEO must lead from the front to ensure it actually delivers. As well as near-term crisis response, CEOs are looking to the future to position their businesses for long-term growth and prosperity. With digital acceleration shaping the future of industries, organizations will need a deep understanding of how customer behavior will shift and how to meet these emerging demands. Data-driven insight and scenario planning and modeling will be critical to understand what major shifts are likely to emerge. Challenges like burden of complexity of legacy IT have not gone away, and organizations will need to focus on cyber-secure IT transformation across organizational silos, drawing on cloud technologies and agile techniques. This is the time for organizations to reflect on their talent base and build a robust foundation of digital skills. CEOs are doubling down on long-term transformation priorities to build the dynamic capabilities needed to succeed in the future. Leaders need to ensure that we do not slip back from climate gains made as a result of the pandemic, and instead build the foundations of sustainable green economy into the future by understanding what areas will need strengthening to withstand environmental or climate challenges. With consumers increasingly focused on purpose-driven brands and sustainable products and services, companies are adapting their product and service portfolio in an effort to exceed those needs. At the same time, investors are increasingly focused on organization ESG performance, with a particular emphasis on the E of climate risk. Organizations that are building robust ESG reporting programs, along with resilient and flexible supply chains and a talent strategy that focus on people and skills needed for a more agile and virtual future, will be well positioned. To sum it up, the global pandemic has had a big impact and in many ways redefined leadership. So we need to step up. We need to think and act differently. We can have an impact. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for this insight, Spencer. So now I'm pleased to introduce Richard. He's partner and global head of KPMG Impact and global head of infrastructure. KPMG Impact brings together an experienced network of professionals from across the globe to address the biggest sustainability the planet is facing. So Richard, I hand over to you.
Benoit, thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to present to everyone listening today. The world has made fantastic progress in the last 50 and 100 years. I remember about 5 years ago, a colleague from Sweden raised my awareness to this book, Factfulness, by Hans Rosling, and it made a huge impression on me in terms of everything that had been done, in particular to raise quality of life for billions of citizens all over the world. But what we're now starting to see is some of the effect of the progress that has been made is challenging some of the fundamental assumptions of how the world works that we have all been brought up with. And what I wanted to do over the next 10 minutes or so is seed a few ideas that have come out of a report that was published jointly between KPMG and Eurasia Group a month back, talking about what we see as 5 major geopolitical face-offs. And these rooted, first of all, in a recognition about what has happened in terms of the societal conversation and societal inequality. On the graph in front of you now, you can see the Gini index that, as we know, measures income inequality in the world. The bottom axis, the Gini index in 1900, the axis on the side, the Gini index in 2015. All of the countries that lie above the line have seen rising inequality over that period. The countries that sit in the top right-hand shaded quadrant, those are the countries with the highest levels of inequality. And the truth of the matter is that whilst the world has made so much progress in terms of bringing individuals out of poverty, indeed to the point in 2018 where the majority of the world's population was classed as rich or sitting in the middle class, that has come at the expense of ever greater inequality. And a world today where the richest 10% of the world's society have an income which is 9 times as great as the world's poorest 10%. And we are seeing this, plus the impact of technology on society, starting to make societal divisions and societal upheaval arguably a much bigger issue in the world than some of the traditional political alignments that we've seen over the last 100 years. So if we now flip to look at the 5 geopolitical face-offs that we and Eurasia Group have identified, and I'll just talk briefly for each of those, and then Benoit, hopefully we can open up into a bit of a discussion in the panel that's going to follow. So if we go to the next slide, the first effect we're seeing is this tension between globalization and localization. And this, of course, is one of the areas, as Steinpol has already highlighted, where the effect of Covid19 has been to exacerbate and accelerate existing tensions in the world. Multilateralism today is under threat. We can see that in the repeated attacks that have been made by some of the world's most important powers on the multinational organizations that were set up in the wake of the Second World War in order to try to bring stability to the world. Covid-19 has highlighted the risks that are created in a more globally connected supply chain. And geopolitics, in particular the tension between US and China, has started to drive countries and then after that, inevitably companies, to look inwards to themselves. So we are seeing a greater level of protectionism in the world, a greater level of desire to focus on support for domestic companies, increased antagonism and wariness for security grounds for companies that sit outside of a particular jurisdiction. The second effect of this, we've badged as East v West, but it's not the East v West of the Cold War. It's the East v West that's being driven by the role of technology in business and society. It's the division that is starting to take place, most notably around the battle over 5G connectivity in the world. And in a graph that sits within that report I've mentioned, we show how the world is rapidly being polarized between those countries who are acting to try to protect their communication systems from what they see as the risk to those systems of foreign power influence, from those countries who are, mostly sitting in the developing world, who are very happy to take whatever system is offered to them with whatever subsidies might be available and on offer. And so this is effectively starting to polarize the world, not simply two major economies, increasingly into two camps. The third face-off we're seeing, we've coined man versus machine. Now, we all know that the debate about the potential negative impacts of technology on human labour and humanity itself is nothing new. It was more than 200 years ago in the UK Industrial Revolution that the first kickback against the role of machinery in industrialisation started. But today, we believe this issue is taking on a much heightened importance all over the world. And indeed, it was the front page of The Economist magazine just this week. Who controls the conversation? Data is becoming fundamental to both the way in which the world works, from both a political, from a corporate, and from a societal point of view. And if data is now critical, questions of data privacy, questions of data security, and questions of who controls what is determined to be the truth are coming to the fore in our society all over the world. And in turn, it is driving ever more fundamental questions about the balance in terms of the productivity of companies between the way in which they use labour and the way in which they use technology. We've all celebrated the fact that through COVID, the way in which many businesses have been able to operate often even more effectively than before has been by the adoption of the sorts of platforms that we're using today for this conversation. But within this also, we recognise there is a risk. There is a risk that the world simply doesn't need the level of manual labour that it needed before. We can see the risk that in a world that is more dominated by technology, by driverless cars, by artificial intelligence, the skill sets that are required in order to support that economy are much greater than the skill sets that are required today on balance, on average, across all of the world's industries. And the world so far hasn't really started to enter into any intelligent conversation about what that means. How do we protect those who will not ever have a job in the future? Or do we move to a world in which it's not the norm to have 5 days working and 2 days leisure, which in a sense is an entirely arbitrary construct in any event? Should we share out the balance of leisure and work more equally and evenly throughout the world as well as throughout the working week? The fourth area that we've highlighted is called protection versus performance. And this goes to this issue of the security of data. So far, 135 countries in the world have issued laws to try to protect the privacy of individuals in this data-rich society. And in principle, we can all see that's a good thing. But we also know that the ability to openly share and aggregate data is one of the things that will drive both greater efficiency in terms of the way the world works, but also potentially much better outcomes for society. For nearly all my career, I've worked in the infrastructure sector. And one of the big debates in the infrastructure sector is how do we deliver public services more effectively? And one of the ways we do that is by sharing data openly. So we know, for example, the movements of individuals within a city in order to optimize the travel pattern within the city. Or in order, for example, to accelerate the adoption of autonomous vehicles on the basis that autonomous vehicles will be far, far safer than human drivers behind the wheel. And we can dramatically reduce the 1.3 million people in the world who are killed each year through driver error behind the wheels of cars. But these benefits cannot be accessed if everybody keeps their data to themselves, and we can't therefore aggregate the data that we need in order to get the benefit of that data aggregation. So how is the world going to find the balance in terms of a way of anonymizing and then aggregating data in order to be able to have the balance between data privacy, but also the benefits of data aggregation? And the last area that we've highlighted, we call today versus tomorrow. And it goes to many of the issues that Steinport talked about a moment ago when he was presenting the headlines of KPMG's CEO Outlook survey. One of the interesting effects of COVID, as we all know, has been effectively a mortgaging of future generations' wealth in order to protect this generation. We are throwing so much money at this pandemic that we're impoverishing the ability of the world to continue to pursue the world's great challenges, in particular, the development of the UN Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Yet at the same time, we are seeing a growing awareness amongst citizens and businesses about the critical importance of the sustainability of our planet and the long-term future, and the obligation that we owe as individuals to our children and our grandchildren and to the future of the world as a whole. It is frankly astonishing, I believe, the speed with which that awareness has increased over the last 18 months. The number of businesses that have signed up, for example, to net zero carbon commitments, or the elimination of the use of coal and gas in terms of powering their offices and their businesses. And one of the effects of COVID has, if anything, to have accelerated the focus on everything to do with ESG and sustainability, which again, in a sense, is counterintuitive. You would imagine that in a moment of crisis, businesses and individuals would turn in and just seek to batten down the hatches and focus on their immediate survival. But actually the reverse has happened. And we've seen the evidence for this in so many ways. We've seen it even in the stock market, where companies that have embraced ESG have outperformed companies that have not, according to HSBC, by more than 4% over the last 6 months. And stocks that sit in industries that are to do with renewable industries and carbon reduction more generally have performed extraordinarily well. So the challenge for the world now is how do we lock in that focus, and how do we accelerate the world's commitment to that 1.5 degree at most increase in global temperatures above pre-industrialized levels? How do we, as businesses, grapple with the obligation that society now looks to us as holding, arguably in some ways to us more even than governments, for the way in which we both protect the environment, we protect biodiversity, we protect human rights within our supply chains, and indeed we lean ourselves into critically important conversations in society, whether it's Black Lives Matter or social and economic inequality. Today, the onus is on businesses to lead in this space. Personally, I think this is hugely exciting, but it's not without its challenges, because it's unfamiliar territory for nearly every business in the world who've generally taken a view that they stay out of all issues that are anything other than the interests of their shareholders. And all of this comes back to where I started, which is our assumptions of the way in which the world works have changed dramatically, I would argue, over the course of the last year or two. It's not simply because of COVID. We shouldn't fall into the trap of thinking that's the case, and once we have a vaccine, we go back to the way things were. These trends were bubbling up before COVID came along. All COVID has done is accelerated our awareness of them, and in some cases nudged us even more firmly in what I believe a really positive direction. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard, for this very forward-looking presentation and very insightful. I would like to call now on our virtual stage Berling Raun Olavsdottir, who is CEO of ON Power, a renewable energy producer based in Iceland, and she is leading the pack for the transition for the low-carbon economy, and she will share that with us. So, Berling, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to give you a short background on my company, ON Power. ON Power is a part of the Reykjavik Energy family here in Iceland. We are owned by Reykjavik Energy, and Reykjavik Energy is owned by 3 municipalities, Reykjavik, Akranes, and Borgarbyggð. And the companies in the family, we operate various things, for example, distribution systems for water and electricity, fiber optic network, and the part of the business that we at ON are responsible for is producing and selling electricity and serving our electricity customers. And we also produce hot water that we sell to our sister company, Veitur. And the next slide. Our mission is to increase quality of life through our operations in a sustainable manner. And our goal is to be leaders when it comes to innovation and development of renewable energy. The customers that we have that buy electricity from us are around 70,000 households, around 10,000 businesses of all types and sizes. We operate a geothermal exhibition next to one of our power plants where Icelanders and tourists can experience how geothermal power is harnessed from the ground and to learn about the geology of Iceland. That is very interesting, as most of you know. We provide services for municipalities and companies when it comes to street lighting. We maintain street lights, and we have for 6 years been pioneers in the building up of infrastructure in Iceland for electric vehicles. Last but not least, we operate the ON Geothermal Park, which is a venue for environmentally friendly operations next to Helliseiðarvirkjun, which is one of our 2 power plants that we operate in the Hengill area close to Reykjavik, and it's located in Ölfus. And the next slide. Our operations, they're based on the utilization of natural resources. Therefore, respect for the environment is and should be at the center of everything that we are doing. And safety of staff is also a core issue in the operations of companies like ON Power. Power plants can be dangerous places. There's heat, there's height, there's pressure and heavy objects. And when projects are planned and executed, a plan for environmental issues in the projects are discussed and decided upon at the same time as we discuss and decide how to approach safety of staff in our operations. And the environment and all that is related to the environment is very close to the heart of our staff, and has been for quite a long time. And it's one of the things that makes us proud of what we are doing every day. And we put substantial efforts in creating and implementing ways to minimizing the environmental footprint of our operations. One of the components of our footprint is carbon dioxide. It is a fact that all production and manufacturing that leads to emissions. And the production of our electricity at OnPower, it emits 7 grams of CO2 per produced kilowatt hour, compared to electricity produced using coal electricity production produces around 100 grams of CO2 produced kilowatt hour. So we emit little, very little compared to others. This is renewable energy. But even so, we have decided that it is important for us to constantly strive to do better. No company is perfect. OnPower is not perfect, but we should all be striving towards improving, especially when it comes to emission of greenhouse gases, as we have been discussing. Next slide. And just very short about COVID. So OnPower, we have been affected by COVID like all other companies, although the effects on our operations, they are not as drastic as the effects that many operations have been experiencing. Companies and individuals, so our clients, they are still using electricity, although we see some reduction in demand that is likely due to COVID. And COVID is also likely to have the effect of increasing the uncertainty for the future demand of electricity in Iceland from energy-intensive users. Another effect of COVID on our operations is that we have closed our geothermal exhibition during COVID outbreaks. It is closed now, and we do that because it is located in the same building as one of our power plants. The purpose of all decisions and changes that we have been making since February as a response to COVID is clear. And the purpose is to ensure that our operations are running smoothly so that we can continue to produce electricity and hot water. And the emergency committee of our family has met daily in the first outbreak. Now we are meeting 3 times, sending emails after every meeting to all employees. Next slide, please. I believe, and I know that you probably all agree with me, but it is crucial to use this COVID, the virus, as an opportunity to channel our efforts and focus on generating a combined global effort where all of us think about how we can change in order to decrease our emissions. The decisions taken by governments, they are crucial and extremely important. And each decision taken by companies, they have the potential for important short-term and longer-term impact. And this is very important for companies and those leading companies to have that in mind always. And combined, the decisions that the individuals are making, they are crucial in taking steps in the right direction also. And let's not go back to normal, like global warming didn't exist. The goal of the changes that individuals, businesses, and governments decide to make in the next weeks and months should all have the common goal of decreasing global CO2 emissions. And this is what we need to do so that we will have the possibility of achieving CO2 neutrality in 2050. It is as simple as that. And then to the next slide. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we at OnPower are doing in an effort to be a part of the solution of global warming that we all have in common. We need to do a lot of things differently, and I find it useful to divide the changes that we need to make into 3 main categories. The first is switching from fossil fuel to renewable fuel, and that renewable fuel can be electricity, it can be methane, it can be hydrogen, or anything else. The second is that we need to change our mindset, and we need to change how we look at and how we create value. And value creation today is very much based on the production of materials. And we need to implement what is called a circular economy, which is an economy that does not rely as much on production to create value. The third one is innovation. In order to create better and hopefully new ways to decrease CO2, if we focus on innovation, then we are increasing the chances that we will be successful at reaching global neutrality in 2050. We at On Power, we are constantly thinking about how we can contribute in each of these three categories, both in terms of our own operations, and then we also think about what we can do beyond our own operations. I'm going to give you just very few examples because so that I can finalize in 15 minutes, but it will be very interesting to have time for the panel also. But regarding going from fossil fuel to renewable fuel, we always, like all other companies should do, always purchase electric vehicles or methane vehicles where you can. The cars are quite good and they can be used for a lot of things, although of course we are still waiting for heavy and long distance trucks using renewable fuel. Part of our business is to drill wells into the ground so that we can harness the steam from the ground to produce electricity. They have been using a lot of oil, and we have before we were generating a lot of emissions through these projects. And in 2016, we decided to drill only with electricity drills. And looking at beyond our own operations, then one of the things that we have been doing is to set up EV infrastructure. 2 years ago, we had completed setting up speed chargers around the island, so that and this was a crucial step so that the electrification of the fleet in Iceland could start and could go well. And it is actually going quite well now, which is fantastic to see. But I don't think that transportation will be only using electricity in the future. I think it's too early to decide on one type of renewable energy for that. We should always use the methane because that is generated using waste from us. And I think hydrogen is also likely to be a part of the renewable energy used for transport in the future. And because of this, we are taking first steps in order to enable hydrogen in transport in Iceland. And we have been setting up in collaboration. We were talking about collaboration before, and that is extremely important in terms of driving these changes. And most of our projects like these are collaborations. And in collaboration with Íslensk Nýorka, Skeljungur, and other parties, we have been setting up a hydrogen production next to Hellisheiðarvirkjun. And this is a project that was partly funded by the European Union. And we expect it to be up and running in the next few weeks. There are now a few hydrogen cars in Iceland, and I expect this to be growing slowly in the next few years. And the second point about the change in mindset, I find that the concept of the circular economy is a useful framework to kind of make it more concrete what this change in mindset means and how it can be implemented. We basically need to rely less on production of things to create value. We have to use the things that are produced more, basically have to use less and use better. And this is where all companies and individuals can contribute. And Finland is the pioneer here. One example of our own operations is on geothermal park. When we produce electricity, there is CO2 emitted, which has been looked at as a waste. And we are now implementing machinery in our power plant where we treat the CO2, a part of the CO2 that is emitted, so that we can use it to sell it to our clients in the geothermal park. And this means that we are decreasing our footprint and we are also creating more value from the same investments. And the third point, innovation. As I said, we have to focus on innovation everywhere, find new ways to do things that we have been doing for a long time, and also to find new things to do, all with a focus on decreasing CO2 emissions. The best example of innovation from my own operations is the Carbfix project. Carbfix is a method of capturing and storing CO2 and was developed by the Carbfix team at Reykjavík Energy, the University of Iceland, and other institutions. Again, this was a collaborative project. And on Power, we have been using this method to capture CO2 as a part of our daily operations for a number of years. And we are now planning increasing the scale of capturing CO2 both at Hellisheiðarvirkjun and Nesjavellir, our other power plant in the Hengill area. And beyond our own operations, in terms of innovation, then we encourage geothermally in related innovation by providing scientists, entrepreneurs, and companies with an experimental facility next to one of our power plants. This facility provides a platform for small-scale experiments using streams that are generated when we produce electricity, and they are generally wasted. And this has proved to be a successful way of facilitating innovation and increased utilization of the value streams that we generate. And two of our customers now in the geothermal park that are called Algae Innovation, or VAXA, as they changed their name to, and Climeworks, both of these companies, they were doing experiments for 1 or 2 years in what we sometimes call the technical park, and it's a part of the geothermal park. And then the experiments that they made, they were successful, and using these results of the experiments, they were able to finance commercial scale operations in a geothermal park. Next slide, please. And this concludes the very short version of the On story, and how we are making and developing efforts in order to constantly find new ways so that we can be a part of the solution, and finding also ways to help others to be a part of the solution. And the next slide, which says only thank you. So thank you very much.
No, thank you, Berlin. So it's also very interesting to look at what you are doing at ON Power, and to try to inspire other companies. So now Run will run a panel, so with Berlin, Richard, and they will be also joined by Aldur Þorgeirsson. Is the chair of the Icelandic Climate Council and previously worked in strategic position at the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat. So I'll let Run now organizing the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for your insightful and full of information talks so far. So I think in order to utilize the time the best way possible, I would like to ask you, Halldór, to tell us a little bit from your side about the insight into how we can make progress towards sustainability during times of COVID. And then after Halldór has said a few words for a few minutes, we will also open up to the panel conversation. And just to reiterate Benoit's words at the start, for the audience to send us questions to pose to the panel. So Halldór. I can't hear you, Halldór, you're on mute.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry about this. Thank you very much, Rind, and thank KPMG and Festa for bringing us together for this conversation. And as been pointed out, yes, the virus has actually given us a very valuable moment to reflect. And what is now key is that reflection changes our mindset, and that we act differently. And that's really the key point here. We have come to a fork in the road, be it corporations, national economies, and the global economy. And what is important, though, to remember is that to the problems that we're facing, that the remedy is not new. What has changed, hopefully, is our receptivity, our willingness to accept the remedy and to apply it. And for that reason, I really believe that we all gathered around in this conversation, we need to be crystal clear in our communication and loud, perhaps, in the way we communicate in our messaging. And maybe this is a too drastic analogy that came to my mind. If you come to a hospital after your first cardiac arrest, the first thing that the doctor tells you might be the most important thing you hear. And I know that this is a kind of an extreme image, but sometimes you need to use extreme images to carry a point. And so we've been very many good things said here about the transition that needs to be happening and the change, what that change of mindset really is. And there too, I really wanted to add very fundamental is that we really need to move from extraction to regeneration. And that is such a fundamental part of the mindset that needs to happen now. We can talk about extraction in terms of energy, but also in terms of food. Agriculture has been built very much as an extractive industry in many cases, unfortunately, intensive agriculture that is, but also in terms of consumer goods. And we've talked earlier about, and Berglind mentioned the circular economy that is part of this regenerative approach. But there is also another change of mindset that needs to happen. We need to move from hubris to humility. And that perhaps is the biggest impact that hopefully the biggest lesson, I would say, that we draw from the ongoing experience. And I talked earlier about the remedy and the transformations that need to happen, but we've known these things intellectually. We now need to understand it through our gut, and that is a transformation that only major events carry, and so that's why. There is now really a window opening into the future, and we need to walk through that window. Let's also be very honest about the facts. And Berglind just talked about renewable energy, but we also need to be very honest about fossil fuels. And we are terrified by the death count over COVID. But the death count over the silent killer of air pollution is much greater. The World Health Organization has tracked 4.2 million deaths every year to outdoor pollution and 3.8 million deaths every year as a result of households that are exposed to smoke and dirt from dirty cook stoves and fuels. And for us in Iceland, this is a remote reality, but about 90% of the global population is exposed to air that is above the threshold that doctors advise. And let's just keep this, and it's very connected, I would submit, Richard, to what you pointed out on the growing extremes of wealth and poverty. The issue is not just poverty, it's also wealth. And we really cannot address one without addressing the other. And so that's and so there are some transformative strategic adjustments that need to be made now, and that takes really moving from slogans to and one-liners to something fully fleshed out strategies and plans. And to state the obvious, we really need to know where we are going if we want to know if we're headed in the right direction. And where are we going? Where do we want to go? And the good thing about 2015 is that it actually brought us a consensus about the future. And that's called the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. And most of us carry the sign of the SDGs as because it makes us it speaks very strongly to us. And that is something that we really have to now realize and focus on. But I also would want to connect it to climate, because what it really means is that we need to prepare now to be competitive. And let me rephrase it. We need to now take action and invest in ways, invest both in people and infrastructure and other assets. We need to invest now in the things that makes us competitive in a net zero economy. Why? Because it's the only economy on offer for the future. And so we know what it takes to get there in terms of technology. And by the way, we have the technology. Let's not. It's really important to continue to develop technologies, but we have the technologies. We just are not deploying them. We also know what it takes in terms of economic policy, but there again, we're not putting it into practice. We need to apply sound economic theory to actually get us. But there's a fundamental. We also, which is the most difficult part. We also know what this will take in terms of will and unity of purpose. And that's the hard nut to crack. And perhaps, the virus will help us do that. Just a point at the end about Iceland. I'm chairing the Icelandic Climate Council, and I think it's important to remember that Iceland has set its objective to reach net zero ahead of others, because we can do it, because of the head start that we have through the energy transitions that we have gone through. And there are so many really exciting things happening in just last few weeks. 3 major economies have announced their dates: China, Japan, and Korea. And who would have thought that these things would be happening so fast? But it's also very important to have a very clear vision of what type of, or what kind of net zero economy we want on this island. And it's really important to remember that there's more than one. And we need to focus much more clearly in terms of these the future foresight and the visioning for that future. And the final point there, I would submit that while we are blessed with renewable energy, and Berglind outlined that very clearly, we have fueled the recent spike in tourism to Iceland with fossil fuels. Let's be honest about this. And now we have this opportunity again, with this opportunity that we are now faced with. As we reinvent Iceland as a destination, we need to reinvent it as the destination where you can come and see and experience and enjoy the future. If we don't do that, people won't come, because people are hungry for clean air, they're hungry for clean power, and this is what we can offer them. Thank you very much.
Wow, I think this is probably the hardest task I've been asked to perform in my life. So we have only a very few minutes left, and amazing people in the panel. Thank you, Berglind, Richard, and Halldór, for your incredible insights. I can only hope that people are noting stuff down. So what I want to do is to combine a collection of questions, and I want to ask each and every one of you to comment on them. And they're not going to be small, but we're going to have to be succinct in our answers because we only have a few minutes. So we're talking about progress towards sustainability in times of COVID, thinking of COVID as this amazing window of opportunity, underlining the urgency that we are faced with, and the ways in which COVID has kind of put the world through a prism, showing us the incredible challenges that we are faced with. We were faced with before, but COVID has put them kind of on steroids, so accelerated the challenges we face. We've talked about leadership and how it needs to change, and we've talked about how we need to think with our gut. We need to really acknowledge and understand what's happening with our gut, because we need to act as human beings. We need to move from sustainability to regenerative sustainability, and that's huge, and change of transforming our mindsets from a linear economy to a circular economy, and so on and so forth. So I'm thinking about the audience listening to us today, which I think is somewhere between 150 and 200 people. And these are mostly people coming from small and medium enterprises in the small island, in the small nation of Iceland. And so as a practical convener, I want to ask you, what does this huge change that we are going through mean for small and medium enterprises in Iceland? What can they do today and tomorrow to start adjusting and owning these transitions? So not just accepting them, but owning them and doing something really energetic and transformational with them. So Richard, you're nodding, you can start.
Thank you. So well, and to be very succinct, two things I would say to all small businesses around the world. One is circular economy has been mentioned. We helped support the World Business Council for Sustainable Development to produce the circular economy indicators report and the supporting app, which was published at the beginning of this year. So that can be downloaded by any small business in order to work out how they really drive circularity into that business. So that would be one. And the other one, picking up something that Hautor mentioned, very close to my heart, the decarbonisation of transport. Every small business either has their own vehicles or their workforce are moving in vehicles. Most of those vehicles today, still the vast majority in the world, are powered by petrol and diesel, and it is driving carbon emissions. It's driving climate warming, and as Hautor says, it is destroying the quality of life because of the impact on air pollution. The faster that we can all do what we can do as individuals and businesses to shift to electric vehicles, the better.
Thank you. Berglind.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I very much would agree with Richard's point. Go to sctri.fi and you have the recipe that the Finns have made consciously to distribute around the world. So we should absolutely use that, individuals and businesses and government alike. It's a very good question, Rund, and it's true, it's not small, but we are now kind of in the situation that we are talking about this, and I sometimes feel I'm preaching to the choir, and I probably am. But I think more and more people, they want to do their part, and sometimes the situation now is a little bit like you have to be kind of an expert in this to be able to, be confidently, making steps towards having your own life more sustainable with less CO2 emissions and your company. And I think it is important to get out of that. How, I don't really have the recipe, but I think one of the things that is on my mind these days, after we set up a screen in our canteen with CO2 emissions from the food that is an offer for lunch. So I can see a screen and there's fish, meat and vegetable, and I can see what my meal will be emitting in terms of CO2. And that is very much helping me to make an informed choice. And I think it has led many of us to decrease consumption of food that emits. So this is a way to draw knowledge from expertise into simple graphic material. I think we can do more than that. And I think we should actually, why don't we just have, for products, we should have the price and the CO2 emission number. We have the knowledge. I think it should be mandatory, but that's my opinion. But Hautor, it was a good point that you might need to be aggressive. So I'm just saying it, and it's a matter of decision. Now all food products have to have the number of calories on the packaging, and this is the next step. And the sooner we take it, the better. And I think it's for companies. I think it is important for companies, all companies, to just acknowledge that there will be less and less demand for their products if they are produced by emission of CO2. The young people, they are there already. They don't want to purchase from stores and companies that they know are not responsible in terms of the environment. And this trend will accelerate. The middle-aged people, we are waking up also, and so. And I think, but it's go learn from the Finns as a first step, definitely. Thank you.
Well, I would add, I would agree with what has been mentioned so far. And just to take the thread one step further, you asked about small, medium-sized enterprises. The key point is take the first step. Every journey starts with one step. And so that's part of, I think, what it's critically important for small operations. Secondly, I really would encourage you to go on the offense. Defensive positions will only mean that you will lose time. And what does offense mean? You really have to build, in my view, build up the morale with your staff, and part of this is actually helping them see the future, and get satisfaction from the steps that are being taken. Finally, I think you should also talk to your bank. And I think it's really important that small companies are actually, to use the word that Bergen mentioned, they need to be aggressive. They need to say, well, and to the government, tell the government, please simplify. Don't give us a 100-page report. Tell us what is key, and really team up with others, because dealing with climate change is a team sport. And that is something that I think FESTA has brought so beautifully, is to bring together the community. And so that's a really important point, is join others that are dealing with similar things to yourself. That will give you strength, and that will give you courage.
Wow. I think we can all go really happy into the weekend. So I think, honestly, from my side, I would like to thank you very much, all of you. Amazing people, and I want to dare the three of you to write an article this weekend and share it with the rest of the world. Honestly, just whatever is in your gut, share it with the rest of us, because it's really energizing and it's really inspiring. So Benoit, do you want to say something at the end?
Yeah, no, again, I will just thank you all for this very interesting points, and also for the attendees. So we got lots of people joining us, so I hope that it will bring good ideas in the mind of the people. So thank you all for your participation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.